Awesome. Welcome everybody to ChatGPT updates. This is the update for June 2025, focused around CPA accounting firms. My name is Hector Garcia, and this webinar is done in collaboration with Count, which is a practice management software that has been completely rebuilding all their tool sets around AI. And for me, it's really important that I see software companies invest heavily in artificial intelligence, not for the marketing factor, for the actual usability factor. This is why these webinars exist, because I'm trying to help every accounting professional I can think of to think of AI from a different point of view, not just what it can do, but mostly for what the possibilities are. And I think all software companies should be looking at and modeling after ChatGPT and all these innovative AI companies to bring to the mainstream, to the average business owner, to the average accountant, really basic tools that will catapult productivity. Because if we don't control the narrative of what AI is or supposed to be, then we're going to let other people do it for us. And as a profession, we need to control this narrative. So I very, very much appreciate companies like Count that want to collaborate in creating content that's useful for accounting firms, such as this ChatGPT June 2025 update. So we're going to spend really 2 minutes really quick introducing myself. Then I'm going to let Greg from Count do a quick introduction of their app and talk about how they're thinking about AI. And then we're going to go right into all the June updates for this CPA Academy webinar series. We're going to spend about 50 minutes and talk through all these things, how to compare different models, what custom instructions are, what temporary chats are, what is memory in ChatGPT, what is historical chat search in ChatGPT, which was added recently, which is amazing. How ChatGPT does integration with Google Workspace for something they're calling internal knowledge. How you can integrate other apps like the very popular Dropbox and OneDrive to conduct deep research queries inside your own data and context. And then we'll talk about the new updated projects feature compared to custom GPTs, which you may have already seen in multiple webinars. So I'm a practicing CPA, have been doing bookkeeping and tax since 2009. I have a YouTube channel. I'm the founder of an app called WriteTool, and I'm the host of Reframe events. And we have 2 events coming up, one in New York City on June 9th and one in Miami starting on November 2nd. The links should all be in the slides if you're interested, or if you have any questions about myself, what I do, the content that I create. Feel free to email me. Greg, if you want to, you can turn off your camera, maybe turn it back on during the Q&A at the end. So the first thing I want to make sure that people are intimately aware of is that OpenAI has a platform that they open for third-party developers. And because we're going to go into ChatGPT and we're going to see that there's so many different models, it becomes really confusing to know, okay, which models should I be using? Which option in ChatGPT should I be using? And for some context, when you open ChatGPT, before you create a chat, so we're going to create a new chat, there's a drop-down menu and there's 1, 2, 3, 4 options. That's a lot. And then there's more models and there's 1, 2, 3, 4 more. And depending on which version you have, if you have the free version, the paid version, the pro version, the team version, you may have access to different models. But just like having to decide one of the 8 models that it's available, it seems like a lot of work unto itself, right? And it absolutely is, because basically every single model will render a different answer. Not just that, it's every single model plus the context that you create, which is what we're going to be focusing on, will also render a different answer. So if we actually go into the link that's in the slides, it's called the platform head-to-head comparison. You can grab 2 different models. So for example, I want to compare ChatGPT 4.0 versus ChatGPT 03 mini, or let's say just ChatGPT 4.1. Okay, that's a good example. So I got 2 different models. I got 4.0 and let me just turn off the sync here. So I got 4.0 versus 4.1, and this is, so you got 2 different models to choose from, and you're trying to decide, okay, which one's going to give me a different answer. So I'm gonna answer maybe a question that I normally would ask, which is, I have a client that's giving me pushback and saying I'm too expensive. Give me some ideas on how I can answer that question. So that's just one example of how you can kind of like think through of what you could use ChatGPT for as a brainstorming partner. So I have a client that says I'm too expensive, and I'm trying to figure out what's the best, most tactile way to answer. Now, remember, I'm using the OpenAI platform, which has absolutely no context. So this would be the equivalent to someone with a brand new free account asking this question, right? There's no context, there's no chat history, there's no memory, there's no system instructions. The question that you're going to ask is going to show you sort of the raw answer. It's also showing you the raw answer that a third-party app would use when they access ChatGPT through the API, which could be different than the way people ask questions when they're inside ChatGPT in itself. So you ask your question, and then you see a head-to-head analysis, which is pretty neat, on the two answers, right? And then the two answers could be similar, could be different. You can see right here again, it's ChatGPT 4 versus ChatGPT 4.1. And they're taking you through similar processes. So, for example, it's saying acknowledge their concern, and then it goes straight into the quote. I understand your budget is important. I appreciate your feedback. And then on the 4.1, it added one more layer. We didn't give it instructions. We didn't say give me additional context. It's just this model is designed to give a little bit additional context. So this one says, show that you've heard them, don't miss the feelings, and then you get the same quote. So you could tell that these two models were sort of trained the same, but then things start sort of changing. Like for example, the next one says emphasize value and benefits, but then this one says reinforce the value. And then now the quotes start getting a little bit different. And again, I'm pretty sure that if we read all this, the general essence of this is going to be the same. But this is the exercise I want you to play along with me, right? You're watching this webinar live, you're watching the recording later, it doesn't matter. What I want you to do is I want you to grab that same exact question, right? I have a client that says I'm too expensive, and I'm trying to figure out what's the most tactile way to answer. I want you to go into your ChatGPT. I want you to use the ChatGPT 4.0, the same exact model that I'm using. And if you're using the free version, you might not get the choice of choosing the model. It will just pick a model for you. But if you're in any of the paid editions, you should be able to pick the ChatGPT 4.0. And I want you to answer this. And essentially what I want you to do, play along with me, put it in the live chat or in the Q&A, if you get the same answer that I'm going to have in the screen. So I'm going to go ahead and ask the question. And I'm going to verbally say for the people that are watching the recording later, how many people say that they absolutely did not get the same answer. They got a completely different answer. So mine says, there are 3 tactile effective ways to respond when your client says you're expensive, depending on the context of the relationship. The first one says anchor on outcomes, not price. Shift the focus from price to results. So you tell me, play along with me in the live chat, in the Q&A. Do you get the exact same answers that I'm giving, or are you getting something completely different? Okay. And I have a really, really good explanation as to why your answers are significantly different. And I'll explain them in a second. So I'll wait for those answers to come in. But the second option here is use the good, fast, cheap triangle, right? Generally educate your clients on the trade-off. There's only 3 levels: good, fast, and cheap. I focus on good and fast because, I want to get the work accurate, ahead of deadlines, et cetera, et cetera. That means we're not going to be cheap, right? That kind of context, right? That it's just giving you some general ideas on how you can do that. So I'm getting in the chat here that a lot of folks here are telling me that they're getting very different answers, and I think again I will explain why in a second, but I'm seeing almost everybody says it's completely different, totally different, completely different. Now this freaks people out, especially accounting professionals. They're like, wait a minute, hold on a second, Hector, you're telling me that I need to leverage AI to help my work, maybe to do tax research, maybe to brainstorm, maybe to figure out if a tax rule or an accounting rule is different. So why in the world are these answers so different? And the answer to that, it is context. It is my ChatGPT. It's already contextualized. Okay, it already has historical information that is using to drive answers. Now, where do we draw context from? So there's a couple of ways that we can draw context from. Here in the gear menu, or in the profile menu on the top right, okay, there is a settings button. Okay, and then here under the settings button, you're gonna have multiple ways in which you can change the context. So one is this one called personalization. So personalization has 2 areas that you can change in context. One is called custom instructions, which we're gonna cover in a little bit. And the other one is called memory, reference saved memories, reference chat history. So I'm going to turn that off. Okay. So my memory is turned off. My custom instructions are off. So we officially have no context. Okay. That's a really important thing, right? So we officially have no context. So I'm going to X out of that. And then the other thing that you can do to kind of kill the context is you can request a temporary chat. So on the top right, next to your profile, there's a little button there that says turn on temporary chat. And when you click that, you're gonna see the text box black out a little bit. And this is like incognito windows. It's the equivalent of incognito window. If I actually send the question through here, I have a client that says I'm too expensive and I'm trying to figure out what's the most tactile way to answer. You can play along, do the temporary chat, send the question. The likeliness that you and I get the same exact answer is really, really high. Why is that? Because there's no additional context that's playing into this. Now, I've still seen where the difference is there's quite a difference between the paid versions and the free versions. But for the most part, what this is answering, okay, so it started with value-oriented response, comparison framing, scope flexing option, let the client decide type of thing. I think you should get approximately similar answers. Why? Because we both went into incognito window, into temporary window, and there's no additional context being implied. So, and again, if I tried this same question with the O3 model, and I ask the same question, again, temporary chat or not, the O3 model will give me that too. Now, keep in mind that I believe that the temporary option is only available on the paid editions. So if you're on the free edition, you might not see that. I haven't used the free edition in a very long time. Quite honestly, I don't waste my time. I don't waste my time with the free edition because the free edition is very restrictive, and I like to take control over what I want to do. So when we go with the O3 model, again, we didn't even change the context. We just changed the model. This is using a whole another way of answering the question. This says pause, probe, and listen. And then it says re-anchor outcomes, not inputs. Similar, that's kind of similar. Offer a scope control option, not a discount. Okay. De-risk the decision. Okay. So you see close with a temporary check, not a hard sell. So just kind of see how you get all these different answers. And then if you go to an entirely different model, let's say, for example, you go to Claude, which is this is a competing model. This is not ChatGPT. And then I start a new chat and I ask Claude the question. And even within Claude, I got multiple options. So I send the question there. And then I go into Google Gemini. Let's go into Google Gemini. So I just wanted to give you some context to acknowledge the overwhelming nature of having so many different things to choose from. And I pay for all three of these. I pay for ChatGPT, I pay for Claude, and I pay for Google Gemini. Here we have Claude giving me an entirely different question because it is truly a different model, and it's using a different approach. Probably similar answer in nature. Like if you were to analyze it, pretty similar answer in nature. But it just it's mind blowing how different this is. And then I got Google Gemini also answering something completely, right? So acknowledge and seek to understand what to say. Why is this tactile? See, it kind of does use an entirely different approach to answering. So then the follow-up question to this, Hector, on top of the fact that I have to know within ChatGPT when I'm going to get one type of answer versus another type of answer, so either a contextual answer or a non-contextual answer, I also have multiple models to choose from. How else do I keep track of all of the other models that are out there? So essentially what I recommend is you look at any of the websites. You look at any of the websites that do leaderboarding. So LM Arena is one of my favorites, and there's more than one. But LM Arena, what it does is you can actually, what a lot of people do is that they'll do a head-to-head chat analysis with this. Like they'll ask the question, and then what happens is Leaderboard Arena gives you, it's a blind test. It gives you the answer from two models. So we got Assistant A and Assistant B, which is what they're calling the battle arena, so to speak. And then you're going to get each of the answers, and then you're going to vote. I like A better, or I like B better. And again, you guys are accounting professionals. You don't have time to waste on this. But the average person that's hanging out or playing with ChatGPT or whatever, they go out there and they vote for D. So they say I like A, I like B after the answers are done, and then once the answer is completely, they receive the vote, and then they rank all the models. This is not within ChatGPT; it's within the entire ecosystem of AI. They rank all the models, and at the end, you arrive to the leaderboard. And according to today, we're just recording this in June 2025. According to today, the top model for text is Gemini 2.5, right? And literally, like 2 weeks ago, it was ChatGPT 03, and then ChatGPT 4.0, and ChatGPT 4.5. So essentially the best way I feel that you can keep track and not go absolutely insane about all the different things that are out there is take a look at websites like this. And what's really cool is they also break them down. So which one's best for text, or which one's best for instruction following, which one is best for math, something that ChatGPT has been accused of not being very good at. Which one's best for coding, which one's best for German or Spanish, or which one's for all these other things that exclude ties, exclude refusal. I actually don't know what those ones in the middle and the bottom. Which is best for creative writing. So it's pretty interesting that you can actually see where a lot of users have ranked these models based on the particular utility. So then when you go out and start using ChatGPT, you'll know exactly which one, or ChatGPT versus Claude versus Google Gemini, which one to approach to use. So I think that's really good context. Both of those links are in the slides. The other link you're going to see in the slides is this little spreadsheet I put together, which is a quick comparison guide of all the things that we're going to be covering through this webinar: the custom instructions, the memory, the deep research, custom GPTs, so you can see how they work contextually to which version of ChatGPT you're in. So this chart is mostly useful for people only using ChatGPT, not comparing multiple, but only for people using ChatGPT. So I'm gonna launch the second polling question, and we'll put that up for about a minute or so, and then we'll go back into ChatGPT and start digging deep into all these different nuances. Meanwhile, I'll monitor the chat while the polling question is up, see if there's any questions. So this is the second polling question. We're going to have a total of 4 polling questions. Okay. All right. So I'm also looking at the general context on all the questions that have being asked for. A lot of people are asking me, what version of ChatGPT do I have? Are you on the Teams version or the Pro version? The answer is actually I'm on both. I have one version on Team that I collaborate in one of my companies, and then I have one version of Pro that I do with the other company because I do a lot of testing and a lot of content, and I need to kind of know if these two versions give different results, and they do give slightly different results. For you, as an accounting firm, you should strongly consider the Team version, and I'm actually going to show that really quick. So this account is the Team version, and then when you go into Manage Workspace under the Settings button, you can go here, it says Billing, and then you can see how many members are in your plan. So I have 3 members in my plan. I'm paying $30 per member, so I'm paying $90 a month on this one company where I have 3 users, which is 3 employees that are working in ChatGPT all the time. And then we are actually within this Team plan, we are sharing chats with each other. Okay, so we are putting something up, sending it to them, they're coming back. So we're doing a lot of sharing of chats. That's why we all want to be in the Team plan. But also, when I want the most power, I have my personal account that I have under the Pro Edition. And the Pro Edition, this is the really expensive one. This is the one that's, I forgot where you go here. This is the one that's $200 a month. Okay, so I am not saying that you should be on the $200 a month edition. I think that for the most part, if you're a solo owner, you should do the Plus edition, and if you have multiple team members, you should use the the Team edition, which is from $20 to $30. It's not that much more, but the ability to chat with each other or to collaborate in the chats is really, really powerful. So thank you for that question. So some people are asking me, where does Grok rank? I don't see it on the LM Arena list. It could be that Grok fell off, right? And these things are variable, right? These things are completely liquid. Next month it could be different, right? So like, don't take what it looks like today as the absolute truth. This stuff could change, could be very variable. Okay, so let's start with creating some context on your chat. So the first layer of context is what's called customized chat. Here on the, it's about the fifth option when you click on your little profile icon on the top right, and this is what's called the custom instructions. This is the first layer of context. Okay, this is the feature that's the oldest feature. This has been here for a very long time, and they added some options like some sort of quick shortcuts to give you some ideas of what traits for ChatGPT to have. But let's walk through them. What should ChatGPT call you? So I'm going to go ahead and enable it for new chats. You have to make sure you turn it on. And then I'm going to say, I am Hector Garcia. Okay, that's just simple. Just Hector. What do you do? So I'm going to say I'm a CPA focused on small businesses using QuickBooks. Okay, so that's it. That's just the context I'm going to give it. So what traits should ChatGPT have? You can just type whatever you want, or you can use any of these sort of templated ways. So they got this one called straight shooting. So I can click there, straight shooting. So it says, tell like it is, don't sugarcoat responses. Okay, so basically it's a template for adding something in here. Anything else ChatGPT should know about you? And I can say, I am very anal about specifics, comma. I need to make sure that everything that's discussed has a source or multiple sources, comma. I need to understand the logic in which you use to arrive to your answer. And I want to, within the same answer, I want to see devil's advocate and the opposite as a proposal so I can evaluate both sides of the coin. Okay? So, and I'm using the people ask me all the time, Hector, how do you talk to ChatGPT like that? I'm just using the Mac dictate features, which Windows has that too. So basically, I don't sit there and type. And I think that if you get used to just talking to ChatGPT, you're going to be using it more because most people just kind of get annoyed that they have to do all sorts of typing. Then here under advanced, you got a couple of things. Do you want to restrict it to not use web search or do use web search? Do you want it to run code? Do you want to use the canvas? You want to use the advanced mode? You get to turn off and on these features. Usually, it doesn't hurt to have them on. So I just like to have them on, period. I think it's just great. They're all potentially useful. So I don't see any reason to turn any of them off. But hey, you have the option to do that. So there is my customized ChatGPT option. So that's layer one, okay? I'm going to go in there and make sure that I'm going to go into my personalization. I'm going to make sure that my memory is turned off because that's layer two. We're going to talk about memory in a little bit. That's absolutely one of my favorite things. So we'll talk about memory in a little bit. But right now, I have memory turned off and I only have custom instructions turned on. So I'm going to start I'm going to ask the same exact question. Okay, I have a client that says I'm too expensive. I'm trying to figure out what's the most tactile way to answer it. The answer is going to be significantly different. Okay. Why? Because I told it that I have a very specific style, right? This is who I am, and I have a very specific style. Okay, so now the answer says, here's a tactile, direct approach so you can maintain your value, leave the room to negotiate if needed, and test whether you're serious or if they're fishing. So we got suggestive response, option A, right? Confident, value driven. So we're going to go, I totally understand where you're coming from. I'm not the cheapest option, and that's intentional. I bring, and then here's a little, differentiator. So deep expertise in QuickBooks, proactive tax strategy, et cetera, et cetera. And it understands that I'm a QuickBooks driven consultant. Therefore, he added that as one of the options. Okay. And by the way, I don't know why I keep putting tactile. What I really mean is tactful, but I guess you get the point. And that's another important piece that actually you can say a couple of gibberish and context clues. It knows exactly what you mean. So, but yeah, good call out, Mark. You're right. It's tactful, not tactile. So we have that means fewer mistakes, more time savings, and often thousands in saved in tax inefficiency. If price is your only concern, there's a cheaper alternative. Okay, and then it proceeds to say why it works. Because I told it I'm kind of a skeptic. That I want explanations. That I want you to kind of like look at the other side of the coin, and then it tells me what that is, and then he gives me a couple of more options. Okay, so a couple more options. Whatever, and then it went and proceeded with devil's advocacy, right? Because that's what I said that I wanted, right? So here's the review. I just need someone to get it done. I don't need all the bells and whistles, and your price feels like an overkill for what I actually need. So here's your strategic response, right? So if you want to go that route, it says use option B, right? And then option B is right here that says, I hear you. Let's make sure we scope it properly. Maybe we'll be doing more than you actually need. If we can narrow those deliverables, we can adjust the price accordingly. So it actually walks you through it, specifically the way, and then it says why not do it again within the context of the devil advocacy. So don't say, what would you like to pay, right? Because it signals weaknesses or lowballing. Although I kind of disagree with that. I think, what would you like to pay is not a bad question. Don't jump into discounts immediately. I agree with that, okay? Because the clients are going to start haggling. Don't ignore objection or they'll ghost you, right? So just different contexts there, okay? So now I'm going to do the exact same thing, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn on, let me customize the chat, and let's go back here to settings, and then under personalization, I'm going to turn on the memory, and then there's 2 layers to this. There's reference save memories, reference chat history. I'm going to turn off chat history for a second, and I'm just going to reference the memory. So what does referencing memory mean? So right here, there's a little link here that says, let ChatGPT save and use your memories when responding. Manage memories. So when you click on manage memories, you're going to see a whole bunch of historical context in which I have talked to ChatGPT in the past, and I had suggested that I save this information as the memory. I've suggested that you keep this information in your memory because this stuff is contextual. Right? It doesn't hit the mark each time, but some of these things may not be as useful. Like for example, I talked about certain things, about my weight or whatever, and it starts recording these things, right? Like I'm 5'8" and I'm a male, and I want to be as athletic as possible at 45. One of my goals, and so as you start looking at this memory and go, you know what? I kind of don't want this stuff to be in there, right? So I can delete any specific memories and have it, quote, forget. So just kind of forget this factoid about me because it's not relevant. So you kind of have the choice of going in there and have it forget any specific factoid. Now, unfortunately, I can't edit the memory, so to speak. You're going to have to delete it and you're going to have to refeed it new piece of information. So how do you feed it memories? So generally, I would say something like, remember that I don't like confrontation. So notice I said, remember that I don't like confrontation, and then it says update save memory. So now it knows contextually that, but number one, it answers the question in a non-confrontational way, but now it's part of the memory. So now next time I ask a question, it's going to avoid confrontation at all costs. Now you could try something like this. Remember that in my planet, the sky is red. Okay, I know that's kind of weird, but it's just I wanted to show you how you essentially override all memory. So if I go and create a new chat, right? And then I say, what color is the sky? It's going to say, on Earth is blue, but in your planet is red. So again, this is the important piece. This example, it seems a little bit silly, but if you want to override, control, shape, or reshape how you interact with AI, all you have to do is give it little snippets of memory. And all these little snippets of memory basically shape the conversation, okay? The other piece that's really important is I've been using ChatGPT for 2.5 years. Take a look at all this chat history, okay? A lot of chat history, if you look at the left-hand side, a lot of chat history that we've done, some in Spanish, some in English, which is kind of interesting. So we have all sorts of history here on the left-hand side. These are hours and hours of brainstorming I've had with ChatGPT for months and years. So now, one really cool feature of ChatGPT, I think it's the paid versions only, they give you the ability to go back and search to those chat history so you kind of just don't have to start over. So for example, I'm going to come in here into my settings and personalization. My chat history is turned off. Okay. So I'm going to ask a question. about the about chat history. I'm going to say, based on my chat history, how do I normally respond to customers saying that my services are too expensive? Okay, now keep in mind, I turned off the chat history search, right? So when I hit send, it's probably going to say, I don't have any chat history, but I have a little bit of context, which in this case, the context is the fact that I'm a CPA educator, content creator, something like that. So that's useful, right? I don't know why. Let me see. I thought I had turned it off. Give me a second. Let's go back here. I turned off the chat history. Maybe it's grabbing this from the personalization, I would say. So I would have to turn that off as well to get that. But then that gives you a little bit of context, okay? Or maybe let me put here. I'm going to turn this off, and then I'm going to have it turn on, searching through the history, not just the memory, but through the history, okay? Because I had the memory on, of course. But let me say through the history, and I can say, when was the last time I was brainstorming with you about increasing my prices? Okay, and then it's going to search the chat history and bring that information in there. So it says, look, the most recent time we were brainstorming about this is June 2nd. Okay, but I guess it just happened. Yeah, it just happened, right? But it's an entirely different chat. But that's the thing. The thing is that each of these chats, keep in mind that each of these chats are their own self-contained conversations and their own self-contained content. If you want to break through and get some information, beyond that, you'll be able to see that. So there's just tons of interesting things that you can do with the chat history, and of course, because I have both personal and business stuff in here, it really makes it even more interesting, the type of stuff that it comes up with. Another thing that you can do, and this a lot of people like this quite a bit, is I have the chat history. Let me just make sure I have my chat history turned on. I'm going to turn off my custom instructions here really quick. So I'm just going to rely 100% on chat history only, and I'm going to ask you a question. Based on everything you know about me from conversations that we had, tell me something about myself that I may not be thinking about, comma, make me realize some unfound potential that I haven't discussed with you, right? So now we're going kind of deep in this, but it's going to do like word math, right? And figure out the average of all the stuff that we've talked about. It's going to try to read between the lines, and it's going to try to get me an answer. Now, I did use the O3 model, which is a high reason model, which takes a little bit longer. So that's going to take maybe a couple of minutes. I'm going to go ahead and run polling question number 3 of a webinar, and then I'll wait about a minute, and then we'll start talking about those answers. So interestingly enough, imagine us standing in a familiar red sky in your planet, watching horizons tint every color with the first draft of possibilities. So then it tells me something that's maybe some sort of untapped future, and then it goes in there and gives me something very, very contextual that you will never get a similar answer because of the memories. The other thing that I found, and this is a very interesting piece, I found that it weighs the last memory more than the previous ones. This is why maybe possibly it's focusing so much about the whole red planet thing. Now, I'll remove that just because, honestly, it kind of annoys me because I did it as an example, but it kind of goes to show really, really well. I'm gonna go ahead and delete the red planet thing, and then I'm gonna go back and run the chat again. Okay, that way we kind of forget about the whole red planet thing. But we'll ask the same question based on everything you know about me from conversations. What can you tell me something about myself that I may not be thinking about? Make me realize someone found the professional potential I haven't discussed. So it forgot about all the red planet stuff. But here you go. You're uniquely positioned to become a product founder whisperer, for accountants worldwide, especially Spanish-speaking markets. Trilingual fluency, right? So I speak finance, tech, and Spanish. It's pretty just interesting how it looks at different ways of looking at this. And I work with a lot of accounting firms that hire me to do sort of one-on-one, help their team use ChatGPT. And at the very first time we started talking, they're like, Hector, I want the practical. I want to see how ChatGPT is going to save me time preparing tax returns. I want to see how ChatGPT is going to help me, reconcile the bank accounts automatically. I want to see, and the reality is, and I just want to be completely frank with you, the reality is that in a chat interface, it's very difficult, it's very hard to get it to do something that you have to do in some other system. So the reality is, ChatGPT, the chat, it's a window into what it can do. And it is the apps like Count or QuickBooks or whatever that start adding the context of the AI into it that are gonna be the ones that help you finish the work. I'm yet to feel that I can dump stuff into ChatGPT and it turns back complete work. So I find ChatGPT is mostly, for the most part, a very strong brainstorming partner, a very strong partner to help you think more sharply. And I think that if you're going to treat ChatGPT as such, it should be customized to work for you. Okay, it should be. So you see all sorts of things, that have to do with my context, right? The projects I've been involved with, Reframe, the apps that I've been involved with, Right Tool, right? So, I want the answers, and then there's trade-off, and then there's, I was brainstorming a concept called lucrative altruism, and I was, developing an idea in my head about how lucrative altruism can be, which are kind of an oxymoron, right? But this is the valuable piece about using the context of ChatGPT. Now, this whole part is highly, highly a personal context. So we're talking about, feeding ChatGPT data so it can help you as a user individually. Now, I'm going to switch over to the Teams edition. This is where it really, really becomes interesting. Teams edition for accounting firms. And then you have this new tool here called Search Internal Sources. This is the most mind-blowing one of all the features. So Search Internal Sources, they're adding multiple things. The first thing they added was Google Drive. But if you click here, it says Manage Connectors. You have different things that you're going to be able to connect in the future. Right now, Google Drive is the only one, but they're going to be adding more things. They'll be adding OneDrive, Dropbox, I'm sure any other document repository systems that you can look at. But right now, this is where they're experimenting with beta testing, is with Google Drive. So right now, if I say search and I click here, it says tools, and I say do internal sources search, and I say use Google Drive, basically I'm saying search through Google Drive. It's going to look into the Google Drive of my organization. So my entire team that has multiple Google Drive folders and files. Now, here's the big question. Do you feel comfortable with giving ChatGPT access to your entire Google Drive that contains personal identifiable information for your clients? That is a huge, very important question. If you don't feel comfortable with it, if you don't trust ChatGPT, simply don't do it. Or don't put client information into your Google Drive. Those are the two dimensions of data. Or create a Google Drive that's different just for ChatGPT, where you just put the stuff that you want it to be using, right? So that really is the context here is, if you don't trust ChatGPT to access your Google Drive for internal purposes, then don't do it. Okay, but here's a question. So I'm going to say go through internal sources, and then I'm going to say what internal workflows or standard operating procedures we have for clients that start having issues with scope creep. Okay, so I'm asking it to search my Google Drive. So this is going to read my Google Drive. It's going to look for documents that could potentially have any sort of information having to do with, in this case, standard operating procedures that for clients that have to do with scope creep. And then it's going to grab that documentation only. So instead of getting the information from the average of world's knowledge using the ChatGPT internal knowledge, this is going to grab information from my documents, right? So I have something called Plus Your Prices Without Pushback, where I say maintain a living scope tracker, flag incremental extras in real time, so the scope value creep is visible when it happens. I allow teams to catch up and document these requests, and to make sure the work doesn't go unnoticed. And then it gives you a quick link to the source document where it got the information from. Okay. Now, another thing that people think about is, what if I put a bunch of what if I grab all my client tax returns for last year, and I put 1,000 tax returns in there and say, hey, look through my tax returns and tell me if there's any patterns or something or whatever. That could be done too, right? Again, you would have to still be, comfortable with, putting client data in there. I am not advocating for that. I'm just answering the question I see here in the chat, which is, what if I were to do something like that? But again, this is going through your source documents. Let me try another one. Okay. So I have an event, right? And I can say, in 2024, I had a bunch of people come to my reframe event. Can you tell me how many people came? So this thing is going to have to go find a spreadsheet somewhere that has a count of how many people, and it's going to try to figure that out, right? Like it's going to go through and rummage through all my documents and get that information, give me the answer, and then give me the document that I read it from, okay? I want to see if it says it right. It was like 125 people. So let's see if it gets close. We'll see. So we'll let that answer. And again, I have some questions here. People asking, whether I use the internal voice feature or do I use dictate. So I use the dictate feature on my Mac, so I can talk through it. Okay. So it says here that there's 180 individual attendees. Actually, that's right. If you add the guests and the sponsors. So yeah, that's actually absolutely right. So we had about 25. We had about 125 team members and attendees, and the rest team members and guests was about 190 people. So again, it went and looked for the documents. I had to click on the document, and then it will actually take me to this specific document where I got that information from. So that gives you, again, this is the stuff that you really have to kind of read between the lines and think of the possibilities of all the possible things that you can do with this once you start integrating your own context. Next tool I wanted to show you is deep research. So if you're on the paid edition of ChatGPT, you have this option called deep research. When you go to deep research, you have different options for sources. Now, like in different webinars, I explain deep research, so I won't get too much into it. But basically, it does a prolonged search and a really deep, in-depth search. And you can connect your Dropbox, you can connect GitHub, SharePoint. So if I want to connect Dropbox, I do the standard Dropbox connectivity, and I'll just go through the login process here real quick so I can connect my Dropbox. I have a bunch of old files in there. I don't have a lot of context there, but we'll set that up later. We kind of see it's really, really quick. Again, same thing as Google Drive. You have to be comfortable with connecting, these apps into it. But I can do deep research. Okay, and I can say, look, search within my Dropbox or search within a web search, and then I can ask it the question. So you can have it combine Dropbox and web search or just web search. So I'll do just web search, and then I'll do something like, how much should I charge for a compilation for a Los Angeles-based company with $5 million in revenue? No notes. I just want to be right at the average. Okay, so I asked it to do a deep research. Again, in this particular case, I had to do a web search only. But if I happen to have a bunch of, bunch of invoices or a bunch of scope documents or a bunch of proposals for different compilations I've done in the past, for example, it will search through those in my Dropbox and then give me an answer based on that. So I'm going to say tech, one time, CPA, Florida. And 4 will go small. Last one will be small firms. Okay, so the deep research is something that will search even within a particular set of documents. Again, Dropbox, OneDrive, or it can do a research project on the web. And on previous webinars, we've gone pretty deep into deep research and explain all the different contexts. So I don't know if by the end of the webinar we'll have an answer, because deep research takes usually 5 to 10 minutes. People ask, is deep research available? I'm just going to go start a new chat. Is deep research available in all editions? I believe that the free edition has a limit, sort of a light deep research, but then to go into sources like this, you would have to be on a paid edition, and then you would have to have in the connected apps, you would have to have at least one app connected in here for it to recognize that it's going to use something other than web search. Okay, so like you have to enable, first you have to do the interactivity and the connectivity before you actually see the option to choose resources. Otherwise, if you don't have an app to connect to, the default source would be a search. So we might not get the answer on this because it's actually doing the deep research project. So you can ask it the exact same question and try to see what it looks like on your side. On the document where I kind of show all these features, you will notice that deep research, if you look at deep research here, deep research on the Plus edition, you get 10 full model deep research and 15 what they call lightweight. And the free edition only gives you 5 lightweight research tasks. So you can use those as a starting point. But I recommend that everybody is at least on that $20 a month version because that's, if you look at the actual sheet that's in there in the slides, you'll realize, okay, yeah, there's tons of benefits of using the Plus edition because you get a lot more stuff. I got 1 more minute left to show you one last thing, and then we'll run the last polling question, and then we'll wrap it up. So last thing I want to show you is the projects feature. Now, the projects feature is really cool for you to create your own context within a particular short-term result you want to have. So instead of having it to use memory or having it use custom instructions or having it use, historical search, all that stuff, you create a new project and you're going to call it tax research project or something like that. And you go to create project. And basically you created your own little window of context. In here, we're going to put tax advice for deductibility questions or something like that. And just giving it instructions of what is the purpose of this project. And then here under file uploads, you can upload any file. So let's say I want to upload section 162 trader business, and then I'm gonna download some sort of like document, right? So here's a document, right? Whatever this is, right? And then I'm gonna download this document, and I can do a whole bunch of documents. I believe it's a maximum of 20 documents. This should say here somewhere in here it would say how many documents it is. Actually, I have to update that, but I believe it's 20 documents. So you come up here, you upload all the documents you want to upload, right? So you want to upload tax instructions, websites, PDFs, whatever, your spreadsheets, anything that you deem as contextual for that project file, you drop it in there. And then based on that, then you ask a question. Can I deduct concert tickets to my best customer? And we are planning to close a deal in there. Okay, so it's going to use a combination of the knowledge information and also some of the if there's documentation in the context, it will go back and pull up from that context. So here's the answer. Maybe there wasn't anything on that document, okay, in there, and I could ask it straight up. I could say, in the files within this project, is there any information? So if you specifically ask it, hey, within the projects file, where's any context having to do with this? And it tells you, well, the particular context of this file is that this is mostly about transportation, commuting expenses. So here's what's inside the file and here's what's not in the file. So again, you create your own context by creating these projects, and these work self-contained. So you have project A, and this project A has these type of documents, has this type of chat history. All the chat history within that project is also relevant. So you either use projects to create your own border or limitations on what the context is and what the context should be around, or you can use the broader sense of ChatGPT to do that. Thank you very much. And then there's also my email address. So if there's anything I didn't cover that you want me to cover on the next webinar or anything that wasn't clear, just email me after this recording is done. Probably you're going to want to watch the recording. We cover a lot of content. Thank you very much. Thank you, CPA Academy. We'll see you in the next one.